In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers cast long shadows over bustling streets, Ethan Caldwell navigated his sleek black Bentley through the morning traffic. At 42, he was the billionaire CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, a tech empire that powered half the world's smartphones. His life was a mosaic of boardroom triumphs, penthouse soirees, and a carefully curated image of success. But beneath the tailored suits and confident smirks, a hollow ache lingered, a remnant of a past he'd buried a decade ago. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind where the air bit just enough to keep you alert. Ethan was late for a meeting with investors, his mind racing through stock projections, when he stopped at a traffic light on Fifth Avenue. His gaze drifted to the bus stop across the street, where a small crowd huddled against the chill. Among them stood a woman, her auburn hair catching the sunlight like a forgotten ember. She cradled a baby in her arms, rocking gently, her face etched with quiet resilience. Ethan's breath caught. It was Lila Harper, his ex-wife. The woman he'd loved fiercely, married young, and lost in a storm of ambition and pride. 10 years had passed since their divorce, a bitter unraveling fueled by his relentless pursuit of success and her refusal to live in its shadow. He hadn't seen her since the papers were signed, hadn't heard her voice since she'd walked out of his life, leaving behind a void he'd filled with work and wealth. But there she was, standing at a bus stop, her coat threadbare, her boots scuffed, and a baby in her arms. The light turned green, but Ethan's foot froze on the pedal. Horns blared behind him, yet he couldn't move. His eyes locked on the child, a boy, no more than a year old, with a shock of dark hair and piercing blue eyes. Eyes that mirrored his own. A jolt ran through him, sharp and electric. The baby looked like him. Not just a passing resemblance, but an uncanny reflection, his high cheekbones, his stubborn jaw, the same eyes that stared back at him every morning in the mirror. His heart pounded. Was it possible? He pulled over, ignoring the chorus of angry drivers, and stepped out into the crisp air. The city's pulse faded as he crossed the street, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. Lila hadn't noticed him yet, her focus on the baby, who gurgled softly in her arms. Ethan stopped a few feet away, his throat tight. "Lila," he ventured, his voice softer than he intended. She turned, and for a moment, time collapsed. Her hazel eyes widened, then narrowed, a flicker of recognition giving way to guarded caution. "Ethan," she said, her tone flat, like she was naming a stranger. The baby squirmed, and she adjusted her hold, pulling him closer. "What are you doing here?" I saw you." He gestured vaguely at the bus stop, his composure unraveling. "I didn't expect." His eyes darted to the child, and the question burned on his tongue. "Who's this?" Lila's jaw tightened, and she shifted her weight, as if bracing for impact. "This is Noah," she said, her voice steady but laced with something Ethan couldn't quite place, defiance, perhaps, or fear. "My son." "Your son?" Ethan repeated, the words heavy. He studied Noah again, the resemblance undeniable. "Lila, is he?" He couldn't finish. The possibility was too staggering, too raw. Her gaze hardened. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't start something you can't finish, Ethan. You lost that right a long time ago." The rebuke stung, but he pressed on, his voice low. "I just need to know. Is he mine?" Lila's silence was louder than the city around them. She looked down at Noah, her expression softening, then back at Ethan. "No," she said finally, her voice firm. "He's not yours. He's mine." Ethan's chest tightened, a mix of relief and disappointment he couldn't untangle. But the resemblance gnawed at him, a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Then whose is he?" he asked, softer now, almost pleading. Lila hesitated, her eyes searching his face as if weighing whether he deserved the truth. "It's complicated," she said at last. "But you don't get to walk back into my life and demand answers. You made your choices." The bus pulled up with a hiss, and Lila turned to board, but Ethan stepped forward, his hand outstretched. "Wait, please. Can we talk? Just for a minute." She paused, one foot on the bus's step, and looked back at him. The years had carved lines of fatigue into her face, but her strength was unmistakable. "Why, Ethan? What's the point?" "Because I can't walk away. Because I see myself in that child. Because I've spent 10 years pretending I don't miss you." He didn't say any of it. Instead, he pulled out a business card, sleek, embossed with his name, and held it out. "If you ever need anything. For you, or Noah." Lila stared at the card, then at him, her expression unreadable. She took it, slipped it into her pocket, and boarded the bus without another word. As it pulled away, Ethan stood frozen, watching Noah's tiny face peer out the window, those blue eyes haunting him. Back in his office, Ethan couldn't focus. The investors' meeting blurred into noise, his thoughts consumed by Lila and Noah. He built an empire on logic and control, but this was chaos, emotions he'd buried, questions he couldn't answer. Was Lila lying? Was Noah his? And if he wasn't, why did the boy look like him? He needed answers, but more than that, he needed to know she was okay. The Lila he'd known was vibrant, unstoppable, a painter whose canvases captured the world's beauty. This Lila, worn and weary, was a stranger, and the guilt of that realization gnawed at him. He called his assistant, Mara, a sharp-witted woman who'd been with him since the company's infancy. "Find out everything you can about Lila Harper," he said, discreetly. "Where she lives, what she's doing, anything about her son." Mara raised an eyebrow but nodded. "You sure you want to open that door, boss?" "No," Ethan admitted. "But I have to." By the next day, Mara had a file. Lila lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn, barely scraping by as a freelance art teacher. No record of a husband or partner. Noah was 14 months old, born in a community hospital, father unlisted on the birth certificate. The details were sparse, but they painted a picture of struggle, a far cry from the life Ethan had imagined for her. He stared at the file, guilt twisting deeper. Had his ambition driven her to this? And why did Noah's face haunt him? He drove to Brooklyn that evening, the city's lights blurring into streaks. Lila's building was a weathered walk-up, its paint peeling like old skin. He knocked, half expecting her to slam the door in his face. When she opened it, her expression was a mix of surprise and resignation. Noah was asleep in a crib in the corner, the apartment small but warm, filled with sketches pinned to the walls, Lila's work, vibrant even in its simplicity. "Why are you here, Ethan?" she asked, arms crossed. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." "About Noah." He hesitated, then plunged forward. "I know you said he's not mine, but I can't shake it. He looks like me, Lila. And you're struggling. Let me help." Her laugh was bitter. "Help? No? Where were you when I needed you 10 years ago? When I begged you to choose us over your empire?" The words hit like a punch. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "I know that now. But I can't change the past. I can help now. For Noah, at least." Lila's eyes softened, but only slightly. "This isn't about money, Ethan. It's about trust. You broke that. And Noah, he's not yours. But he's connected to you in a way you'll never understand unless I tell you." "Then tell me," he urged, stepping closer. "Please." She sighed, glancing at Noah's crib. "Sit down," she said finally. "This isn't easy." Over the next hour, Lila unraveled a story that shattered Ethan's world. After their divorce, she'd spiraled, lost in grief and betrayal. She'd moved to a small town upstate, trying to rebuild, when she met Sarah, a single mother dying of cancer. Sarah had a son, conceived through a donor at a clinic, a donor whose profile matched Ethan's to an eerie degree. Blue eyes, dark hair, high cheekbones. When Sarah passed, she had no family, no one to take her boy. Lila, still raw from her own losses, adopted him. Noah was that boy. "He's not yours, Ethan," Lila said, her voice trembling. "But when I saw him, I saw you. I thought it was fate, a way to hold on to something we'd lost. But it's not. He's mine. And I've fought every day to give him a life worth living." Ethan sat in silence, the weight of her words crushing. Noah wasn't his son, but the resemblance was no coincidence, a twist of biology, a donor's profile that mirrored his own. He looked at Lila, her strength radiating through her exhaustion, and saw the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd failed. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For everything." "Sorry doesn't fix it," she said, but her tone was softer now. "I don't need your pity, Ethan. I need to know you'll walk away and let us live." But Ethan couldn't walk away. Not this time. Over the next weeks, he didn't push, didn't demand. Instead, he acted. He sent groceries to her apartment, paid off her overdue rent anonymously, funded art supplies for her classes. He didn't ask for gratitude. He just wanted to ease her burden. Lila noticed, of course, she was too sharp not to, but she didn't fight it. Slowly, they began to talk. Coffee in her cramped kitchen, walks in the park with Noah. Ethan learned her rhythms, her fears, her dreams for her son. One evening, as snow dusted the city, Ethan arrived at her apartment with a small canvas, a painting he'd found in an auction, one of Lila's from their early years together, a vibrant abstract of hope and love. "I kept it," he admitted, handing it to her. "It was the only piece of you I couldn't let go." Lila's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in a decade, she let him hug her. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Noah toddled between them, giggling, his blue eyes bright, and Ethan felt something shift, a spark of purpose beyond wealth, beyond power. He didn't ask to be Noah's father. He didn't need to. Instead, he became a quiet presence in their lives, funding a community art center where Lila could teach, setting up a trust for Noah's future, and learning, day by day, what it meant to be selfless. The city watched, unaware, as a billionaire traded his empire's cold ambition for the warmth of humanity, one small act at a time. And in that Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by sketches and the soft hum of a sleeping child, Ethan and Lila found not a rekindled love, but a new understanding, a testament to kindness, to second chances, and to the power of a heart willing to change. 25-minute description. The story follows Ethan Caldwell, a billionaire CEO in New York City, whose polished life of wealth and power is disrupted when he spots his ex-wife, Lila Harper, at a bus stop with a baby, Noah, who strikingly resembles him. 10 years after their bitter divorce, driven by Ethan's ambition and Lila's need for independence, this chance encounter unravels buried emotions and unanswered questions. Ethan, haunted by Noah's familiar blue eyes and Lila's weary resilience, grapples with the possibility that Noah might be his son, despite Lila's firm denial. As he digs deeper, he learns Lila adopted Noah, whose biological father was a donor with an uncanny resemblance to Ethan, after the child's mother died. The narrative weaves themes of kindness, selflessness, and redemption as Ethan, once consumed by ambition, seeks to atone for past mistakes. Instead of forcing his way back into Lila's life, he quietly supports her and Noah, paying bills, funding her art, and building a community center without expecting forgiveness. Through small, selfless acts, Ethan rediscovers humanity, while Lila's strength and Noah's innocence anchor the story's emotional core. Unexpected twists, like the donor's connection and Lila's adoption choice, lead to a heartwarming climax where Ethan and Lila forge a fragile new bond, not as lovers, but as two people healing through compassion. Set against the vibrant backdrop of New York, the story resonates with universal themes of second chances and the transformative power of empathy, crafted to captivate a global audience, especially in the USA.